Hey everybody, Dr. Dan here. Welcome back. So this is week 2 of our class, covers chapter 1 in the book. And one of the things I talked about in the intro video when I was going through the syllabus was about our student learning outcomes. And one of them is the ability to identify trends in history. So for that reason, we're starting before 1900. This is a picture of Karl Marx. It's not me with my beard unshaven. I don't have that much hair, so I'm envious of Marx. But this is a picture of Marx from the mid 1800s. And even though our class says we're starting at 1900, we got to go back to actually the 1700s just briefly. Because as I talked about these student learning outcomes and the ability to identify historical trends, one of the big historical trends is industrialization, right? And that's really kind of the Industrial Revolution, whatever, is really kind of seen as in the 1700s, but it affects us in the 1900s when our class starts in a big way. So read the chapter, and it's going to tell you Marx is up there because historians love Marx. I think that his ideas were relevant for the time. I don't think they are now at all. I think in many ways, his ideas have kind of been disproven because he had a big thing about the workers are going to own the means of production, but he was really referring to industrial stuff. And he couldn't possibly envision the information age where actually the people own the means of production with their computers. I mean, the social networks are pretty much ubiquitous, and a lot of people have just started in their basement. So I think the Marxist theory that the workers are eventually going to take over and it's going to happen in stages is interesting, and there's a lot to it, and I like it because it tried to categorize history. But really, I don't really know if it's played out the way that Marx thought it would. But neither here nor there. I don't want to sound too much like a professor. Marx is the dude here, and he's here when we talk about industrialization because he wrote about that. He wrote about sort of the cruelties of industrialization and how the worker turned into a commodity. I know we all feel that way, the wage worker. And so that's why he's on here. And that's important to understand the historical trend. It's part of the historical trend of industrialization, but there's some more parts that are possibly more important, and we'll talk about this. But as you get into chapter 1, basically, it's the beginning of modern industrialized society. Before the 1700s, people were still using horses to get around, okay? And, by the end of the 1800s, people were using railroads and even automobiles, and they had the telegraph and the telephone in the mid 1800s. So things changed a lot. The point being that up until, I'm going to say I would put it at 1850, 1860, things fundamentally hadn't changed much since Latin and, Roman and Greek times. Basically horse and buggy, no modern communications, modern roads, but that's true in both places. So really, that's why this modernization, part of our course title is contemporary, sort of like new. The newness really started then with the Industrial Revolution. So know about that. That's a major trend. And then pay attention to how the notion of liberalism is defined in the book. And that's sort of the framework for all Western societies. Pardon me, I dropped my water. And I apologize for drinking water, but I have to when I talk. But know what liberalism is, okay, and how it's defined in the book. And just check out some of the stuff. I mean, steel was really invented in the late 1800s, 150 years ago, and it really built the modern world. I mean, a lot of the stuff, the bridges, the sewer systems, the infrastructure that we still depend on today was built in the 1800s in some places. Certainly here in our town of Toledo and in New York City and a lot of other big metropolitan areas. I mean, a lot of our infrastructure has been around that long. So it's important. Know about that. Read about women's rights. On page 10, you'll read about the Seneca Falls thing. Read about the invention of electricity in the 1800s, and I have a little thing. Yes, I wrote a book about it, so you can go to that link and look at my book if you want to. That's not what you need to do. And then read about Russia and the Ottoman Empire. And the reason I want you to know about the Ottoman Empire, you're going to say this is totally irrelevant to my life. It is, but it isn't, only because the point of reading about the Ottoman Empire is that it was this big, sophisticated society, a lot like ours, that lasted 400 or 500 years, and then it was gone. after World War I. So, stuff like that could happen. And so I just want you to understand there's a little thing you have to do about the Ottoman Empire, not part of this history, really, but you need to know about it ahead of time because it explains a lot about unrest in the Middle East that's been going on for hundreds of years. And it explains also that no society is like, bulletproof in any way. So check that out. And then next, I want to go through the quiz, and I'll talk to you about what's going to be on the quiz, and then we can stop. So I just talked about liberalism. Make sure you know what liberalism is. I'm not going to tell you the answer, but it is a society as free from restraint as possible. Maybe I gave you the answer there, so you never know. Check out what the Ottoman Empire is. There's really not a question about it, but there's a link you have to go to and watch and read in order to complete the quiz. So make sure you do that. Pardon me. Next, there's a question about Chapter 1 and about the Industrial Revolution and when it starts. There's no definitive date, but for the purposes of our discussions, the Industrial Revolution starts in Great Britain in the 1700s, which is the 18th century. That's the answer. So you have that one. Question 4, in order for an Industrial Revolution to occur, this is not in the book, okay? What has to happen first? And so the answer there is an agricultural revolution has to happen first. And I only put this question in as a shout out to farmers because I grew up on a farm. And in order to have an industrial society with cities and people working in factories, someone's got to make the food for them, right? It's kind of a big deal. So you have to have an agricultural revolution before you can have an industrial revolution. I don't believe that's in the book. That's me. So make sure you know that. That's question 4. And then question 5 talks about socialism, scientific socialism, and Marxism, and what was it created in response to? Like, why did Marx write this? Why did he say, hey, something's going on? It's really, the answer is industrialization, as I just covered. Marx is the dude that said, hey, industrialization is coming along. We're all being turned into wage workers and we're being taken advantage of. Basically said capitalism's bad, communism's good because the workers should control everything. And I have a theory on that, but I'm not going to get into it right now. So there's the quiz. That's everything you need to know. But go through this chapter. And again, the big point here is that this thing called industrialization is happening. That's the big trend we're looking at in this chapter. Okay. And the reason it's important also is as we get into the next chapter, we're going to talk about imperialism, all right, and colonialism. And that's the idea where these industrialized countries like England, not the US yet in this early history, but England goes into India, takes over India, colonialism happens, Belgium goes into the Congo, and they're going there to feed their industrial machine. In other words, Belgium's going into the Congo for rubber, England's going into India for fabric and cotton and spices and that sort of thing. So those are the trends we're looking at chapter 1. So that's it for this week. If you have any questions, please let me know. Good luck on the quiz and make sure you finish it on time. Have a great day. Bye-bye.